It's my sincere pleasure to welcome you all, newbies, friends, and already enrolled CAS participants and alumni like Alex. Welcome back, Alex, to this live session, info live session on the unfolding CAS3, as we call it, systemic design as part of the MAS in regenerative systems. And before we dive in to the very rich content, Tobias will explain or introduce us to us. We start with a little introduction round, and I would start with my colleague Sylvia.
Hello, everybody. For those who doesn't know me, because part of you already know me, so I'm Sylvia. I'm part of the DRRS team. I support this beautiful DRRS program in communication and design. And I support the program in translating science into design and practice in a inspiring to action way. Let's call it like that. And I like this expression of what I'm doing. Is like I synthesize the dots beyond the latest technologies. And what I do is like I bridge meta design, meta levels with place specificities, with embodiment, inner processes. And this is all that you can find in our program, our very rich program. So I'm very happy to be here today with you. I'm happy to share more information about the program and also help you with the graphics that you will see during our session to help you understand and get involved in what we are into within DRRS and upcoming CAS3. So happy to see you here tonight.
Yeah, thank you, Sylvia. That was already really juicy and rich of content. So thanks for the sneak preview. And I think it's important to mention, because it's going to be a topic later on, that you are currently located in Ostana at the Living Systems Lab Monvis Institute, which will be a topic later on. But yeah, please, Tobias, introduce yourself.
Yeah, hello everyone. I'm looking forward to a very fun evening on all this amazing content that's been growing over the last years. My name is Tobias Lute, and I had the pleasure on the last years to basically do the main development of this program and the ideas many years ago. And now I'm directing the program here at ETH and having the pleasure to work with Sylvia and Michael and also many other contributors over the years who have been supporting the development until now, based at ETH Zurich at the Systemic Design Labs, which is holding this program, and also founded here the Monvis Institute about 10 years ago. And the picture, my background, just want to say one word to this. It's here, if it's visible, there's 2 dots, and these is kayaks. These are actually some of our systemic cycles training group from this springtime, hosted by our partner Camping Casavio. Folef is here with us, where we offered the first training for systemic cycles weaving guides. And so it's a beautiful, embodied, interconnected program with many people. And I want to as well introduce Daniel Christian Wahl, who is not with us tonight, but he has been a main co-designer, partner, collaborator in this DRS program. And we're hearing later a bit more about Daniel, because we are visiting some of Daniel's work on Mallorca in this CAS.
Yeah, thank you, Tobias. Well, last but not least, I am the third in this beautiful group of people developing this program, and I was lucky to join Tobias and Sylvia 1.5 years ago, and it's been an amazing journey since then. I am coordinating the course process, which includes everything from the administrative side to content-related issues. That comprises also the MOOC series, which I'm humble to contribute to together with Tobias, which I really like because my former background, training background, is journalist and texter, writer, author, and I can contribute in some ways to this beautiful and basis-giving MOOC series. And apart from that, I am also very active on the Mighty Networks platform, the DRSS platform, which you are familiar with, I guess. So yeah, Tobias is sharing the screen, and I would say we jump in right away, Tobias.
Yeah, thank you. So we're having a quite a tight program. This Miro board will be shared later on after this session tonight with all the information, including the recording, so everybody can deep dive in this content again with pace and time. We're having here just a quick look at tonight. So the recording of this info session will be posted here below this orange-yellow text from tomorrow on. Tonight's program is basically that we present the Certificate of Advanced Studies Systemic Design as part of the Master of Advanced Studies in Regenerative Systems at ETH Zurich. And we're having roughly planned till 9 o'clock, and then we're having hopefully sufficient time for questions and conversations. Here again, our group. Important dates are pinned here, just so we know. CAS number 3 here in a kind of greenish color. Application phase is right now till end of August. It's just this month. And then the CAS will start mid-October till basically end of February with deliverables. And the main physical component is the field trip here, end of October. So just that the dates are here. Also any kind of links, permalinks, where to get more information, and also where to book personal information slots mainly with me in the second half of August. So this is here and will be shared later on. We are now taking some time to go through these visuals here. And Silja mentioned there's a lot of work putting into this continuously evolving and fluid program in itself. It's the first time we are running the entire program. That's maybe important to know. It's in a very organic program. It's based on a MOOC series, so it's nothing very new because the MOOCs have been out there for some years. But obviously, this CAS that we are running now, as such, is running the first time. So let's dive a bit in. And you can, of course, feel free to use the chat for any questions that you want to drop already. And we're trying to move through this quite efficiently. So the whole program is a Master of Advanced Studies in Regenerative Systems, and Master of Advanced Studies means it's an executive program, not a consecutive. Consecutive means the kind of usual, we do high school, we study undergraduate program like a bachelor, we study a graduate program like a master, we do a PhD. So that's more like a consecutive pathway. This is an executive pathway. So it's for people who have studied already, often a few or many years ago, bachelor, master degrees and PhDs or MBAs, and then having been working for a while and gaining further experience, work experience and practice, and deciding now they maybe want to proceed with this kind of learning path or update their rich experience with some other types of knowing and knowledge, and also find a rich cohort of classmates to work with. So we are here a group of experienced professionals, and that's a bit of a difference maybe to a very young study program where we have a bachelor or master study with, let's say, beginning of 20 years. And that brings certain connotations in. We see here the CAS Certificate of Advanced Studies #1 group last September, 1 year ago, here at the Monvisa Institute, where we started the first CAS with this 10-day trip together. We're having here some questions, and again, we can look at them later on, but some of the guiding questions, since we are, ETH is of course an engineering technical university, asking questions like what kind of engineering is it that we need or don't need in complex systems that are living systems where we are part of? Question. And how do we engineer in something that's continuously changing, evolving, what kind of methods, practices are adequate, and where maybe sometimes we do not engineer at all, just sit with the system. So there's a lot of technical, behavioral, embodied type of knowing and knowledge and practices coming together in this very systemic way of being part of complex systems that move forward. And so that's really involving a lot of different topics, a lot of different backgrounds, between technology, AI, warm data, and solos out in nature. And that is such a program that's missing, has been missing on the market. And that's what we are offering in a nutshell here in this program. So it's a lot about creative positive impact in complex systems, yes, as part of learning communities. Again, we are a group of experts, very diverse experts from many nations, different fields that come together and exchange their experiences in the light of enacting complexity in a designerly way. We are visiting, or we are not only visiting, but we are engaging in different place-specific regions. We call them real-world labs, or with the newest language, even living systems labs, where we are part of long-term developments in our field design trips. So it's a lot of practice and reality and unpredictability involved, in addition to, of course, theories, philosophies, and deep discourse. We're going in more detail later on, but in a nutshell, again, we can think about some ranges of scientific and engineering methods, quantitative methods, such as social network analysis or life cycle assessment or computer-aided design or geographic information systems, these kind of very established, very important quantitative methods. We somehow need to be able to work with these methods, this kind of inquiry, science, engineering, hard and soft science, or qualitative science. And we also need designerly tools, designerly ways of prototyping, of iterating, of acting without maybe full assessment or understanding of a system. We also need ways of expression, graphic expression, of bringing people together, of finding new ways of collaboration where different visualization tools dialogic tools are important. And we have these important elements of embodied practice, of being part of unplannability in real-world systems, where we don't construct artificial boundaries like we usually do in academic institutions, but we are out in these living system labs, real-world labs, where things happen that we cannot plan for. And that leads back to the inner processes, the look back into ourselves. Dealing with complexity and uncertainty requires also an inner journey, which often usually is also not part of the kind of more, let's say, technical and scientific view on such systems. So we are attempting to bring these different elements together in this program to better enact complex systems towards regeneration. And just in very brief, just for those who haven't maybe seen it, we walk and we travel together on a journey that goes beyond the current understanding of sustainability as it's framed in the societal global discourse, such as the Sustainable Development Goals, where we understand this as a kind of next step we are moving to, but not the big vision and the big aim, where we understand sustainable as adding no additional harm, but going towards something that's regenerative. In other words, we as part of nature also living and working and doing economics as nature would do. And that includes some kind of restoring actions or repairing certain damage, ecological, social, cultural, also inner damage that has been done over time. So it's a longer journey, a continuous journey that reaches far beyond the current understanding of sustainability. Working with different scientific frameworks, again, we're coming hosted here at ETH Zurich. So obviously we are science and engineering based, expanding from this notion. And this shows just a very rough, very important framework for us. It's called the Circular Cross-Scale Governance Spiral, and it basically, in a nutshell, shows 8 scales of decision-making that also have a spatial component, from green chemistry, number 1, such as carbon dioxide emissions, via buildings and cities and landscapes and regions, bioregion, to transnational and global supply chains and connections. So we are hovering with all these 8 scales, and each of these scales has their own complexities, plural, and circularities. We see and zoom in here on one of these 8 scales with at least 5 types of circular flows. I'm not zooming in further right now. The details at this point won't matter so much, but I want to show here that we are, on the one hand, learning, studying, practicing to enact uncertainty, where we have to be very organic and very flexible and react and enact. And yet also we're having a science-based, framework-based research base with all these programs. And we're bringing these different worlds, let's say, together because it's needed and it's often missing. Yeah, then we're having different tools here. This is one example. That's why I'm showing it. It's a bioregional map. You see again these 8 scales of governance, this spiral here, applied to the Living System Lab Monvise Institute here in the Italian Piedmont, Italian-French mountain region, the High Po River Valley. And this is what we're doing for all the kind of field design trips or these living system labs where we are part of. It's an application of the framework we saw before, and different didactics, different topics are connected with it: cartography, geographic information system, drone mapping, point clouds, terrain models, but also warm data of experiencing such a region with a bicycle, for example, talking to people, giving space for intention, for feeling, and also for collective experiences. So this is one example of a very rich, didactic method, but also science-based design framework that we're using. So this is just a very rough introduction to the whole master program. Now we're deep diving a bit into this next line, which is the structure and the elements of this program as it has been planned and also grown to now the full master. And just to be brief in here, we have this beautiful tree that Silva designed, and the numbers here are moving fast, so don't hit us right now on these numbers. But basically what it shows is this tree metaphor encircled in this kind of organic dashed shape. And you might have seen this organic shape. We call it the wobbly, the DRRS wobbly. It basically shows a complex system that is continuously changing shape and moving. It's not, you cannot really grab it as we are used to grab something that's, we try to understand, analyze with better data, and then we try to have that specific method that helps us to control it. Other than accepting that these systems are continuously evolving, changing, and we got to find ways, methods, tools, practices, also cultures and the processes to be part of these processes. So we see here the 4 massive open online course series in that tree crown. These are the freely accessible theoretical foundations of this executive program here in the root system. And we can see the color coding with 4 colors and 4 elements. MOOC number 1, massive open online course number 1, is connected with the CAS certificate of advanced study number 1. Same with the other MOOCs. And eventually one can do any of these elements in isolation. Only the final MIS module, the master design thesis here in brown at the end, this is the final degree granted by ETH when all the other elements have been taken. And they can be taken in different rhythms. So one can start with any of these elements. It's very flexible and very adapted to work rhythms. There's more information here. It's been growing fast. We now have about 8,000 MOOC participants from 170 nations and 2,500 subscribed people on the Mighty Networks. And yeah, it's quite a high, let's say, formal education level, and a slight majority is female. Yeah, we're going here very quick through these rhythms just to make sure we understand the structure. Here's again the same from before. We have 4 color codings for the 4 elements. Each CAS from the executive program is introduced with the MOOC. And if someone wants to do the whole program, this is the rhythm of doing the whole program. But one can start anywhere, anytime. It's just important to know that the MOOC is always the precondition for the CAS, because there is the basic theoretical knowledge and language that we need in order to come as such diverse groups together and work on experience-based real-world challenges, which we call quest as a kind of fluid set of guiding questions that is the navigation help for us in this program. It's individual, and everybody is invited to apply with their own quest. So what is actually interesting to you if you apply or work in this DRRS program? And the program, us, the organizers, the lecturers, but also the cohort as such in a peer-to-peer context are supporting the development of this interest in relation to the theories, the practices, the field design trips, and also all the experts that we invite in addition. This is shown a bit more details about the same direction. It's again important to know and to remember we have these 4 elements and the title here shown as well. And the start is always with a MOOC in order to enter a CAS. We see the credit points here, 12 credit points per CAS in the European credit transfer system. Each CAS can be done in isolation, each MOOC as well. But in order to do the entire master program, all elements have to be done. We have different other courses in here. Some of them exist already, some will come in some time. We call them pathway courses. They deepen the content of the MOOCs, but they don't reach as far as a CAS. They also take less time. They're also less costly. And we're showing later on some of these pathway course or elective courses later on. So I want to hand over to Sylvia. Sylvia will take us a bit in the melody, how these different elements come together.
Yeah, so what you see here is very fresh from the press, a very fresh graphic. It's consisted of the main 4 modules that we're talking about right now, 3 CAS and 1 MAS. And as Toby also mentioned before, we have our visual language reflecting, each color reflecting particular module. And through this graphic, we wanted to show, we call them learning waves, which is helping you understand what's the dynamics of a learning process, of a quest process, of a social social exchanges happening during the program. So this is more or less similar, of course, with some individual differences. There is a online virtual part and also physical. So the lines that are more horizontal, they represent the online part, and this dynamics up and down that you see within every module. This is the field design trip. There are a lot of things happening individually, personally, but also within the group. And these fluffy bubbles that you see along each line, these are points of organic emergence. So this is something that we cannot design, we cannot predict. This is happening, and this is happening because of the openness of the group for the things to come. We will get to the details of particular programs a bit later, but this graphic was actually shown to also refer to the next slide, if you can show it, Toby. So these are 2 exemplary proposals of how you can go across the modules. So first learning pathway that you see on this slide. It shows regular steps if a participant starts from CAS 1 and then is interested to continue with CAS 2, CAS 3, and then finishing master thesis, this is pretty regular step-by-step process, and it takes around 2 years, this process. Another one will take also around this time, but for example, imagining that you want to start with the CAS2, so in the middle of process, it doesn't really change the fact that you can do master, but it will only take place in a different time. So starting from CAS2, you move on to CAS3, and at a point when we continue with students to proceed with master thesis, there is a little bit of pause for you. And when we restart the CAS1 process, you can continue your learning pathway and then finishing with master that from this time on will be repeated every year. So you don't have to wait 2 years for the next master module to happen. So there's a lot of flexibility. You can start at any point of CAS1, 2, or 3, and within 2 years you will round up your whole learning process and finalize your quest. Do you have something to add, Toby? Is there something more to?
No, it's great. Thank you, Sylvia. And as you said, we're getting later on when you explain a bit some of these detailed melodies when we go to the CAS in specific.
Mm-hmm.
But that's, thank you, great melody. It's part of the organicness. And this is really making this program specific, this toggling between quantitative science and engineering, and also the kind of organic melodicness, warm data, and inner processes. And this combination is what we experienced over a long time. And it's not just us, it's common knowledge that we need to combine these different worlds. And we are together on these different pathways to become these kind of, weavers, as we call them, or us, and guides to navigate in these very complex worlds and being able to connect and to hybridize these different worlds. We're going more into details, hybrid learning, Sylvia mentioned it. We're having the MOOCs, which meanwhile are self-paced, virtual online, can be taken anytime, anywhere. We have the CAS with live conversations. You can see here some, for example, with Kate Raworth, where we invite specific experts, and we have the field design trip, and obviously also different engagement. So that's super cool. Now we're going a bit into the 3 CAS, and obviously focus on CAS number 3 because that's coming up. But still, in order for someone who is new here in this program, just a quick recap of these 3 colors. And Sylvia had it here nicely written. These 4 elements have certain functions. If we summarize them in very brief, then MOOC and CAS number 1 are the openness, learning to unlearn, where we open up accept that there are such as worldviews, different worldviews. We travel and expand our understanding of sustainability far beyond and deep dive into regeneration as a term, and specifically as a process of life itself. So these are the foundations. In CAS number 2, MOOC number 2, it's beyond system thinking, the title, and the broader reason is to build meta-awareness. So different processes, inner outer processes, different tools, different scientific methods, different embodied practices to build this kind of literally mental scaffolding of zooming in, zooming out consciously as a process, and becoming a better system thinker that also think beyond the classic understanding of system thinking. And now number 3. Number 3 is the one that's coming up now, entitled Systemic Design. And in brief, we would label it Navigating Methods Relations. So one thing is knowing sufficient about different types of methods from science, from engineering, from design, embodied practice, and also tools for inner processes. And the focus really is on how do we bring these together and how do we employ some or none of them when it's needed or not needed. So this training to have a sufficient understanding of different types of methods of inquiry is proceeded with to be able to navigate consciously with them. And that requires all the previous steps. So we can say, what if I start with CAS number 3? I'm becoming this navigator. I need these tools from before. And yes, that's true. So that's why MOOC 1 and MOOC number 2 need to be taken at least when this program is then restarting mid-October. And the MAS, just also to label it, it is really finaling with this quest. So the quest that's happening throughout each element, each of these MOOCs, CAS, the quest, the series of questions, the project evolves further and further, and it's a continuous process. In the MAS at the end, the focus is on getting these gradually evolved quest kind of system to a kind of, and you see the curve is leveling out here, to a kind of quite evolved, matured thesis that is then really something on a very high level. Yeah, so just in brief, and this is something to share, we have here an amazing overview of MOOC number 1, of the different content in these different modules in the spiral form, from the very beginning introduction to the worldview chapter, to reframing complexity, design as nature, mind and movement, and synthesis. And this is per developed from all MOOCs once they had the second iteration, and we had the time, the chance to also take back enough feedback from many people who give us feedback and evolve it in this way, which gives another way of access and of learning, also in a fast way of spurring relational thinking. So it's not a linear process, but very relational. And this is one example. You see here the wobbly, the moving kind of complex system, which is continuous changing shape, and we study and experience how to be part of it. Different rhythms, we go back to this a bit later. And the first field trip here to the Piedmont, you can see some examples from kind of circle-based discussions to development of methods in real world. Here we developed a serious game with the mountain community here and tested it. So it's methods, yeah, learning methods and same time practicing them in the real world, which means it could go wrong because we cannot control how people react to it. But that's the rich learning, which is not constructed. We can curate it, but we cannot 100% guarantee a plan for it. And that gives a lot of real world learning. We're having here also, yeah, just local actors. So connecting with the region on a systemic cycles trip, as you can see, a bikepacking for 5 days. Also socially intense, personally intense in terms of, yeah, exploring our mental and physical comfort zones in the protection of a group, and bring this further to also from a kind of cohort, a CAS mates group that then is very much equipped to learn together again virtually, and it makes a huge difference as we experience. Yeah, more here, and don't want to go into these details. You can see some of the invited experts, from someone like Daniel Wahl to someone like Laila June, so indigenous PhD researcher, from economists to yeah, a serious game designer. So I see a bit the diversity that we dive in. We're hearing a bit more about our current CAS cohort in a minute. So that's an example for one CAS that happened 1 year, CAS number 1. Now we're in CAS number 2. Beyond system thinking, we're having always these kind of rhythm spiral with an in-person element that goes through the entire course, and the virtual element. The in-person is heavily yeah, created and impacted through this real-world design field trip, which in CAS number 2 went to Norway, but also through the personal network that each participant is asked to further curate in their own place, their own bioregion. Because physical doesn't only mean we together, it also means a participant with their own rich learning network and quest-related program where they are. And here maybe, since this has been very exciting, Sylvia, this is, you made this really cool melody. Maybe you can take us in brief about what happened, amongst other things, in terms of dynamics on this field trip to Norway.
Yes, of course. So it's referring to the previous graphic that I told you about. This is zoom in into one of the modules showing the dynamics of your learning process. And if you can zoom in, Toby, a bit into the legend. So
I cannot do more in this.
you cannot more. Okay, so I don't know if you can read it or not, but just to tell you what I see. So the first
see, I'm a bit dirty.
lines, or maybe like that, yeah. So we have 4 types of line and organic emergence bubbles. So the very thick plain line is a representation of a learning process that gradually grows along all the modules and including the field design trip in the middle. We have line consisted of like a smaller vertical line. This is a quest path, and starting from the beginning, this is silently bubbling at the background. We don't talk that much about quest. We let participants soak into the topics, get the knowledge and get a lot of inspirations. And around 4, 5, and then 6 module, the quest pathway speeds up, things get intense, students are lost, they change their questions. There is a lot of happening at that intensive time. So this is more or less how the quests behave along our program. And we have also field design trip. So this is the most dynamic and intensive part. And CAS2 was very special with this field trip design field trip happening around 4th and 5th module, because usually our idea is to bring people together and help them connect physically at the very beginning. So it happens around intro module 1, maximum 2, and this is the type of energy that we bring to the whole learning process altogether. So this was a very particular situation where for some technical ETH reasons, we had to move it at the end, but usually this trip takes part at the beginning, and that's our idea to curate and to hold your energy and to translate it into full creativity and full power on with working on your quest. And there is also one more interesting dotted line. This line is showing social dynamics and also individual inner dynamics. So as you can see, it grows across the modules. And again, around the field design trip, things start to be very intense, and there are also organic emergence bubbles that you can see, and this gives a lot of beauty, and yeah, these are examples of our openness to uncertainties and complexities. So we walk the talk, we preach what we teach. So this is what you can be prepared for, and then reality brings all the flesh into the structure that you can see here. And Toby, if you just maybe right away we can zoom down to CAS3 to show this regular dynamics. Yes, so we can see around 1st and 2nd module there is field design trip, and then the growth of other processes just starts up from that part. So this is our general idea for field design trips.
Thank you. The melodies of learning. Michael, do you want to give us a quick, just a quick brief of what a diverse, amazing cohort we have again with us as so-called CAS-mates?
Yeah, I'm glad to do this. Yeah. Who is taking this course? I mean, to get it in advance, to get it out in advance, there are no boundaries. The cohorts or the groups are as diverse as the program is comprehensive, as we just learned. So I made a short list because I can't remember all of them. So it's a non-exclusive, exhaustive list. So we have consultants, innovation lab founders, artists, communicators, production managers, architects, engineers. We have all of them gathering in these courses, and this variety and this in this broad field of expertise is mirrored partly in the Mighty Networks platform. Why I'm saying this? Because it is really important that we, for me as a writer especially, that we bridge our expertise and the learned content into the real world, find touch points to things that are going on around us in a political sense, in a technological sense, of course, also in a scientific sense. So this Mighty Network platform is directly linked to this very, very rich and diverse profiles we're seeing here. Now, of course, for example, Vorlev is from the tourism field, because I saw him a minute ago. Well, yeah, so this would be just a glimpse at our ever-changing groups, and I'm really looking forward and curious. I'm very curious how this next CAS group is manifesting itself.
Thank you, Michael. You are doing such a great job in being also a very good listener and doing this very important sensing with our CAS mates, and always open ear, that the personal basis, the trust building, which we again curate a lot through the field design trip, and these joint experiences of meeting each other as vulnerable and engaged, and sometimes also sad and tired humans. And you're doing a great job of holding the place, holding the community, and bringing it together. So I very appreciate it.
Thank you.
Very quick one here for the field trip to Norway, which just happened in June, starting in Oslo in the opera, having a beautiful evening here with Birger Sebaldsson, who is also coming to CAS number 3 from the Oslo School of Architecture Design, a long-term colleague, talking with us about some giga mapping. He is a deep resource in systemic design. You see Haley Fitzpatrick was finishing her PhD, advised by myself and Birger on the same topic. We'll hear about it later. And here we're having one example for a nice conversation. Birger wanted to invite experts. Went to Hemsedal in the mountains, where we participated again in long-term programs where we from the Oslo School of Architecture and Design have been engaged in over some years with different bioregional weaving capacities, staying in such a beautiful Norwegian home here with our group, cooking together, etc. Taking a road trip over the mountains to the north to Trondheim, meeting with one of our CAS mates, Kati, who is engaged with her partner in a kind of farm to develop in a kind of living system lab. This emerged through the course. There was not the plan. So we adopted the plan to not only visit Hemsedal, but also go to Trondheim and visit Kati and another friend from the sustainability consulting area in the outdoor industry, and doing these kayak trips to meet the bioregion, engage with local people, companies, embody these systems, and be part of change processes in these areas actively, not just by visiting, but by doing certain activities. For example, here you see 2 of our CAS group planting trees. We planted, like, I remember, 1,000 trees on the lands of this of Kati's farm, to get dirty hands and understand what it actually means, how hard it is to plant a forest, but also learn about ecology and forestry and land use, and same time, give space to meeting each other and oneself in a hot, almost 24-hour light period of working hard. And here another local expert from the wool sector, and Kati, wool from their sheep, and we getting the chance to learn about wool supply chains. So from regenerative agriculture to different types of fiber resources and how the supply chain may work. And obviously we're using this in different ways. So that's just a snapshot in the future up there. This was a bit of CAS number 2. And now finally, to have this background, we're coming in CAS number 3, called systemic design. And here we talk about methods. We've been learning and studying different methods throughout every CAS, from social network analysis to serious games to systemic cycles to different kind of, let's say, giga mapping, visual dialogues, etc., etc. Systems, narratives, synthesis maps, but we are digging deeper. And now we're adding a couple of methods and disciplines that we found over time are very helpful to illustrate the hybridization between different methods and ways of inquiry. Here we can see the structure of this next CAS. As Silvia said, the field design trip is right at the beginning in order to have the chance to meet together intensively physical. And we know from experience, and I can speak a bit my own experience as a mountain guide for, meanwhile 20 years, the physical relations, not only being together, but doing activities together that expand beyond what we would normally do in a kind of classroom setting or office setting. For example, planting trees, for example, kayaking, for example, needing to support each other, showing our weak and strong moments and learning how to hold this in the group. This is unmatched by certain outdoor activities that we can achieve a kind of, dynamics within the group and ourselves that we cannot reach in many programs that take a long time, but they don't have this intensive activities. And that's unique. So we are challenging ourselves in a healthy way. So nobody has to be a fear of risk, but I'd say there are moments when we learn to go beyond what we would normally do from ourselves. So the field design trip here is right at the beginning after induction module, and then we're having in total 9 modules if we call the introduction and the field design trip as a module. The thematic modules then origins, advanced systemic design directly afterwards, where we dig a bit deep in what systemic design is as a kind of cross-disciplinary field that spans from design, I call it, so people who are trained as designers, design schools, from architects to landscape designers to product designers, experience designers, service designers, and other types of design fields. Spanning together with systems thinking. So it's originally defined as design meets system thinking. So creative, iterative prototyping, doing in sense of complexity. We're expanding from this. As I said at the beginning, we are here an engineering institution, and we bring more science and more engineering to this field. And this is also deeply based on our experience, understanding that certain quantitative methods, certain understanding of what is science, certain engineering methods and also cultures need to be understood and sufficiently connected with in order to have a full portfolio that makes us better guides to navigate and then understand what is the relational value of these different inquiries. So from these origins and understanding where it comes from and talking to different people who are deeply in this field, we go to scientific and engineering methods and reasoning. So something from philosophy of science to understanding what is science as a process, as a methodology. How do we write scientifically, and what are certain quantitative and qualitative methods? For example, life cycle assessment. How to develop a life cycle assessment analysis. What does it mean? What does it comprise? What kind of data go in? What can I do with it? What is the kind of reasoning behind it? Or engineering, for example, to have a basic understanding of computer-aided design and doing a technical drawing and understanding also structural aspects of something that's not only beautiful, but it also has structural elements. So for example, so we're digging into this one. And you can see here, it's always 2 elements, this parallel pathway. So there is a virtual part where after the field trip, we meet virtually once, usually twice a week, Tuesdays and Wednesdays evening, Zurich time, online on Zoom with the Miro board as a help. And yet there's also this kind of physical pathway where the quest, which is the kind of guiding spine through each's learning journey here, should be related to place-specific questions where the participant lives and works. So it's again, not only thinking about physical relation where we are together, we as a group, but also nudging the processes with one's own learning partner and or company and or request process. Next one is designerly methods and cultures. And a lot is here brought in from experience. So, and I can say for myself, really embodying this part is when you learn and being trained and teach and research in a science engineering institution, and you come in a design institution, the cultures are completely different. And it's mind-blowing how different the cultures are and how little we often know from each other. It's mind-blowing. And understanding sufficiently the different ways of reasoning, the different cultures, languages, helping to understand the nuances, helps at the end to bridge. And we need both types of inquiry. Both are needed. Nothing of them alone is sufficient in their own. Next one is cross-scale design. This is a bit going back to how does the scientific and designerly inquiry help us to connect with place. Regeneration is very place specific, so it manifests at some point in place, in local cultures, in local ecology, in local land use, in local language, at the end in a kind of bioregional scale, which has the size to build and develop a kind of economy that can be regenerative. So cross-scale design brings these kind of model 4, model 5 into place. And again, the 8 scales of governance are what we're using in this way in specific. Number 7 is embodied and transformative practices. We're getting to some examples later on. This is the kind of warm data, the kind of feeling, sensing, the kind of that we often don't accept as valid knowledge. It's intuition, it's feelings, it's experiences, local wisdom, indigenous knowledge, and these kind of aspects. Number 8 is navigating complexity, and that brings in a lot the inner processes. Inner process, what's happening in ourselves. It's not just those methods out there, it's also what's happening inside. And aspects like self-compassion, types of flow, but also being able to develop this notion of organic emergence, which we mentioned earlier, which we would briefly describe as the inner capacity to befriend uncertainty. So things are continuously moving. Whenever things get messy, our natural reaction is often to hold on to more structure, to better data, to better methods. And we're seeing that this often doesn't help. It gives us initial hold, security, but at the end it's too messy to go that way. So how can we develop the inner and outer capacity to befriend this kind of continuous change processes and being in uncertainty, which requires both technical knowledge and methods, and requires also embodied cognition practices, and it requires inner processes of cultural mindset shift. And at the end is a synthesis module, which brings these things again and again together and also relates back to the quest. This is now the core of this course. And it's just fresh from the press. And we see another beautiful artwork that Sylvia developed from iteration processes that go back to a lot of work that I want to also cite here. So I mentioned Haley Fitzpatrick before, who works with us at the Monvis Institute, but also at AHA Oslo and here at the program. And this paper was just published together with Birger Sigvaldsson and myself. It's part of Haley's PhD process in the Systemic Design Journal Contexts of the Systemic Design Association. It's a young journal, but it's completely in our field. And here see a systemic cycles didactic in the High Sierra of California, one of 3 places where Haley did her field work or field design work. And what Haley developed in her PhD is this kind of basic part between research through design, between science, social science focused, and embodied practices. And so Haley used very different methods from these different fields in her PhD, but it wasn't planned. It basically emerged. So she learned these methods basically on the fly while doing it. and she researched and analyzed how do these methods relate with each other. Why do I suddenly do a giga mapping workshop from the kind of design aspects, and why do I need to collect some socioeconomic data, and why do I maybe need a semi-structured interview, or where do I develop layered landscape mapping using GIS to visualize something? So why these methods in what context, and how do they inform each other? And that's very nicely framed in this paper. And if we see, just in brief, this process graphic in 3 different locations, going through real world challenges, navigating alongside evolving questions, collecting data through different types of inquiry, and this informs not only the process in one place, but also cross places. So this is a very recent, just published, functioning and very well perceived illustration of what we are putting into this course in a further development, broader sense. And so here in this graphic, you can see it's a draft. So it's not published yet, but it will be published as this conference here in autumn, where we have the different fields of inquiry, science, both quantitative and qualitative science. And you see different methods, and you see these 3 dots. So it's not an exhaustive list. Obviously, there are many more and others, but these are the ones we focus on initially, because it shows that these are all relevant, very relevant, and very illustrative. They're engineering methods, they are designery methods, they're embodied practices, and they're inner processes. So we will talk about all of these in here. And we will not attempt to master all these methods after this course, obviously, but we will be able to understand what are these methods for, how are they being used, what can I do with them, and how do they interrelate. And so, since we have a group of experts here, there might be someone, for example, from engineering who is good in photogrammetry, or in point cloud computing, or in GIS. From the design field, there might be someone who is really good in graphic design, for example, or in experience design, or in landscape mapping. And there might be someone who is in the kind of scientific fields, very advanced in statistical data analysis. So these people, of course, we invite people from outside who teach these methods, but we're also very open to bring in the collective knowledge that is then in this CAS group. And that's a really different way of learning, because we have expertise in ourselves. And so we try to bring this in and bring it also back into the course. For example, in our current cohort, we have one participant who is working for a global tech company and trained in AI as well. And her partner was invited into our group by this participant to bring in some of his very practical industry-related AI knowledge and generative AI. And this worked so well that we invited him back into this next course to be a bit of a sparring partner for generative AI, very much from deep practice. So you see, AI, statistical data analysis, lifecycle analysis or assessment, these methods, same as nature observation. So connecting with the place, understanding sampling techniques. We have them, some ecological sampling relates with nature observation. So when I learn how to take data, observation data, for example, sampling plant species, how do I do that scientifically correct? What kind of statistical data analysis would I need? What are some examples? What are some software tools to do it? And how does this relate with the other field of nature observation? System sensing. We engage in systemic cycles, these aspects, but we also look at consciously at local cultures and local language as a very important part of connecting with a place. And this comes together with inner processes, and we're doing some of them physically out on our field design trip on Mallorca. For example, a rite of passage with a solo night out for those who want in the mountains of Mallorca as part of council practices. So these are yeah, kind of mix between embodied practices, but that mainly spur inner processes. And the big goal here is to learn sufficient about these different fields of inquiry, to have sufficient connection with most of these modes of inquiry, to know how to study them more, how to apply them, be maybe expert in some of them, and ask these questions as a kind of user-centric but also collective question. Why do I need to intervene in that system? Where? Place specificity. When? Maybe not right now. Maybe it takes time. What kind of inquiry is relevant right now? And how do I do it is then the last question. And the how is mostly trained here in this course. So it's a challenge-based navigation. We call it engaging the relational value of methods. Usually we are training people in expertise in different methods in isolation. What we need to do is building up on that, and this knowledge is of course very important. We need experts in different methods. We are becoming experts in navigating the relational value, and that's highly systemic. To build as well this kind of compass aspect, asking questions, and being able to toggle in between, and being able to bring these different inquiries together. So this is a very, very core base of what we're doing. And these, again, these methods and inquiries are not just examples, that's what we're working on. While it's open for others as well, which might come up throughout the course. I'm conscious with time. RSD Symposium is the conference series of the Systemic Design Association, which is the kind of main global community in systemic design. This is a fascinating conference series. You see also the language, Rivers of Conversations. It's a kind of living systems language in here, very designerly. We are offering also a kind of discussion workshop around this, let's say, expansion on systemic design that we're teaching here in this course. So it's extremely up to date. It's amongst the forefront of developments in these discussions, and many other people are involved in that. So when mid-October our course starts, this RSD Symposium is in Oslo, end of October, but there's an online version, RSDX, October 16 to 18, I think, and we're going to participate in it for those, of course, who want. So that's also very close to what's happening out there. And finally, a bit of, making the mouth watery, Mallorca, Balearic Islands. We're seeing Mallorca in the best time of the year, and we have prepared this field trip last year in the same time, end of October. It couldn't be better. It's warm, the water is warm, the weather is usually quite stable, the fruits are ripe, you can eat yourself through the island. The main tourism stream is gone, and we have time to meet with Daniel Wali on the right side. On the land he likes to say he's custodian of, with a map of Mallorca, and Brett Robertson, an Australian person, a friend who is working in an NGO called Save the Mediterranean. He's a dive instructor originally, and he, for example, will take us on a ship on the ocean, and we're going to snorkel with local conservationists and look, for example, at different restoration areas underground, as one example. We're seeing here almond plantations, and the land is barren. We are discussing and understanding about so-called traditional knowledge question. How long does it have to reach back to be called traditional? And what are issues with these practices today? We're going to use bicycles, not as much equipped as those here with overnight gear, but we're going to cycle through the island and embody and experience part of the island in different stations. The northwest coast, thematic of water capturing, so regenerative land practices obviously are part of what we experience, learn. Farmland, we will be on a very secluded farm high up in the mountains where we spend some time where actually nobody gets to go. It's not public, but through the contacts of Daniel's work, We are connecting with lots of different projects and programs. And also, of course, enjoying the beauties of various kind. So here's a map, a very brief map. There will be a specific Medium article coming out in the next days, which Daniel is right now writing on, based on the preparation of all the field trip. And in this Medium article, there will be much more details about the field trip. And I can say, honestly, just this field trip is already worth participating. So we're gonna basically start in Palma and explore the Tramontana region and both coastlines in here. Mostly by bicycle. There will be e-bicycles for those who would like to. There will be transportation, so nobody will be coming on a bike packing trip. The gear will be transported, but there's ample of space to enjoy these embodiment types. And so we will look at different, or participate in different projects across these mountains. We will do council space where Daniel invites us in different methods. So we will have a local entrepreneur company who developed a kind of algae-based filament for 3D printing. And the idea is that we apply some of these methods. We are learning methods. So we're going to use a drone to develop a drone flight protocol, develop the basis for photogrammetry for point cloud, developing a terrain model and printing this terrain model in a 3D printer with this algae-based filament right now. So there's a lot of technical methods learning here. And this 3D model that's printed can be used, for example, as a visual dialogue tool for permaculture planning on the land that Daniel also stewards. We're going in conservation projects in different parts. We are talking to large-scale farmers on their pathway towards being regenerative. We're looking at land-sea alliance conservation aspects and many more. So details will come out in the next days, and we'll share this as well in these channels. So there's just a snippet on some of what we can expect in this field design trip. Yeah, that's pretty much through at the end here. Maybe now not in the focus. MOOC number 4 and the final master thesis module, which will happen next spring. So the first whoever did CAS1 1 year ago and wants to do the MIS will be able to finish now in 1 year with a master of advanced studies, ETH and regenerative systems. So some details here. We have these different electives. Mentioned it earlier in our tree structure. We started the systemic cycles training program in May, and we are expanding on this course run, and these courses will commence in 25. Yeah, that's maybe it. Opening for questions and further, feedback. Thank you for following this intense, short presentation, but I can just say it's fascinating and it's lovely. And again, I would love to be participant myself, but we are all participants, and that's the culture we are curating. We're learning together, and the whole thing is a continuous learning journey, and that's also our culture. So thank you. Mic's open.